Hey guys, it's Jenny Silver. Many of you who are receiving California EDD PUA unemployment benefits are letting me know in the comments that you are confused about a message sent to you by the EDD stating that they will require self-employment documentation. The message sent by EDD states that due to new federal rules affecting your PUA claim, you are required to provide documentation that shows that you were or plan to be self-employed or employed at some point during the calendar year before beginning your PUA claim. If you have not already provided the documentation, we will notify you when it is time to complete this requirement. Important, you are required to provide this documentation even if you have returned to work and are no longer seeking PUA benefits. If you do not submit this documentation that shows that you were employed, self-employed, or planning to be self-employed, you may be disqualified from receiving PUA benefits and be required to repay the benefits you received on your PUA claim. Now, many of you are quite concerned about this, so I want to walk you through what this means, what you will need to provide, and what will happen if you cannot provide that documentation. Effective December 27th, with the Continued Assistance Act, anyone who applies for and is approved for PUA is required to submit documentation to substantiate their employment and self-employment or planned commencement of self-employment. The Department of Labor states that proof of self-employment includes but is not limited to state or federal employer identification numbers, business licenses, tax returns, business receipts, and signed affidavits from persons verifying the individual's self-employment. Also accepted is proof of planned commencement of self-employment, which the Department of Labor says would include but is not limited to business licenses, state or federal employer identification numbers, written business plans, or a lease agreement. What this means is that the EDD will now be asking to collect your proof of self-employment documentation. So any of those items that I listed will make you compliant for showing documentation of self-employment. You may also show documentation of intent to commence self-employment if you didn't actually begin your self-employment yet. So what if you fail to comply? Individuals who do not provide documentation substantiating self-employment or plan self-employment within the required time frame are not eligible for PUA. So if you're not eligible, if you don't have any proof, any documents at all, will you have to repay back all of the PUA benefits received? Or will you be reduced down to a $167 minimum PUA balance? Those of you who claimed a higher self-employment income than you actually have documentation for will be reduced down to a $167 minimum weekly benefit award amount. You would then be required to pay back any benefits awarded to you above that $167 per week minimum. This would mean that you do have documentation of your self-employment or plan to commence self-employment, but do not have documentation of the higher amount which increased your weekly benefit award amount. But for those of you who do not have any of the approved documentation to prove that you had self-employment income or plan to commence self-employment, the Department of Labor states if the individual fails to submit such documentation, the state may only establish an overpayment for those weeks of unemployment ending on or after December 27, 2020. This means that if you do not have any documentation at all of your PUA benefits that were paid for claim weeks after December 27th and onwards is going to be issued an overpayment notice. So if you cannot procure any of the documentation that is required and you are issued an overpayment notice, is an overpayment waiver an option? Now, overpayment waivers are optional, but the state can decide to utilize an overpayment waiver if the claimant did not commit fraud, had the overpayment issued to them through no fault of their own, and it would cause a financial hardship to the person from whom it is sought. This means that an overpayment waiver is not guaranteed, but may be an option depending on your circumstance. Now, the EDD did reply to my questions today with some minimal information, letting me know that this is a preliminary notice and that if you are trying to upload your documentation now, you are to await the next notice with more detailed information. Okay, you guys, I hope that was helpful. Please click like, subscribe, leave me a comment down below.